Welcome to the mandatory, the post-fight live show. We just saw an immaculate performance by NAOYA INOUE over Stephen Fulton. By the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button. And if you haven't already done that, we appreciate that you will. And lots to talk about on this one, Bryan. INOUE gets it done in style, and it looked pretty easy as well against a guy that was the unified champ at 122 pounds, was that guy at 122 pounds. And I thought this was a fight where Stephen Fulton was going to win by decision. And once again, INOUE moves up a weight class and proves that he is the monster, literally.
In our betting preview and predictions for the fight, I picked INOUE to win by decision. I also said if he's going to knock him out, it's going to be late between 7 and 12. So hopefully you did both, because you might have come out a winner because they were both greater than plus 200 odds. And look, I think this wasn't even close. Like, in watching the fight, because I know, like, a lot of people, more than I thought, had said, "Oh, Stephen Fulton's gonna take this dude to school." ESPN is hyping him up, him being Naoya Inoue. And that Stephen Fulton's gonna just use his reach, just jab him, whatever, just outbox him. And it's like, none of that shit happened. I'm not sure Stephen Fulton won a round, if we're being totally honest.
I mean, like, here's the thing that I kind of saw.
I'm sure you found a round to give him. But
the only round that I found to give him was that 7th round, which I think was his best round. He came out decent in the 3rd, but then INOUE ended up winning that round. Looked a little bit better in the 4th. INOUE won that round. Looked a little bit better in the 5th. INOUE still won that round for me. The only round that I actually gave Stephen Fulton was that 7th round before he ended up getting knocked out in the 8th, and they had to stop the fight. And it was that nasty right that INOUE landed, and he was mixing it up. He was going to the body, and Stephen Fulton could just not get into a rhythm in this fight, not at all.
And from the beginning of the fight, Stephen Fulton and Naoya Inoue come out. Inoue jabs him to the belly twice, and I'm like, oh shit. All right, there goes the range question.
I thought he was too tentative the whole entire fight. And when he was in range, you would think that he would start to let his hands go or establish the jab. And when his game plan wasn't working, I was like, he might have to have like a telephone booth fight with this dude. Is that safe? Probably not against a guy like Inoue. But he just couldn't get into a rhythm that whole entire fight. And it's crazy because, I mentioned in the last episode, like, when Inoue moved up to 118, I was like, is he like too small for 118? I was proven wrong, right? He moves up to 122 and does this to the king, essentially, of the 122-pound division, and makes it look easy. And we talked about what this might mean for Inoue if he gets this victory and does it in style. Pound for pound list. Okay.
Oh.
Is he number 1 after this?
That's what I was saying before we were talking about this. Look, I think, and if you have comments, if you're watching, please do leave them. But listen, I think that he is in that conversation and was even before this, and we'll have to see what happens with Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence and who wins how. But look, people were talking about Naoya Inoue's resume before this fight.
Yeah.
Stephen Fulton, like, his best win was against Brandon Figueroa, who's a good fighter, but like, let's not act like Stephen Fulton beat this list of champions either. Inoue has been in 17, 18 straight title fights at this point, right? He cleaned out the bantamweight division. Jason Maloney, who we had on the show, Emmanuel Rodriguez, who Jason Maloney fought, both of whom got stopped by Naoya Inoue. Naoya Inoue stopped both of them. And Rodriguez, he did it very early in the fight. It was in the 2nd round. It was shocking that he did it that early to me. It was the most epic body punching I saw that year. And in terms of pound for pound conversation, this is similar to just what I was saying about Terrence Crawford and the Roy Jones Jr. comparison. It's one thing to be fighting dudes and people say like, oh, you're not beating the best competition. It's another thing to just blow them out of the water, because none of these fights with Inoue is involved in are close, except for that first Nonito Donaire fight where he fractured his eye socket. He like broke his face during the fight. Then it went to a decision, but he still clearly won that fight. No one is out here saying Nonito Donaire won that fight. And then in the rematch, he destroys him. This is what he does. So the floor is pound for pound number 2. Number 1 is Terrence Crawford if he wins that fight. Errol Spence, if he wins that fight, impressive fashion, is going to have a case, but I don't know if you're going to put him at number 1 over Naoya Inoue after what we just saw.
Right now, Inoue's number 1 on my pound for pound list. After what we just saw him do to Stephen Fulton, like this is crazy of what he just did to Cool Boy Steph. Because Bryan, you know I'm a big Cool Boy Steph fan. To go into that ring right away and a nerd just commented, Fulton got exposed. You know what I think it was? I think Inoue's just that good.
You think it's the mystique also? Because
wait, hold on. Before you get into that, how much did the layoff, Fulton's longer layoff, have to do with his performance today? Because I think it had something to do with it. We saw Josh Taylor fight Teofimo Lopez not too long ago. I feel like that was some ring rust. Fulton's been out of the ring for over a year now, going to Japan. He wasn't in his hometown. He wasn't even in the States. He went to another country to fight Inoue. Had a long layoff.
Is Shantelle making excuses, guys, in the comments?
No, I'm saying how much did that have to do with it? Do you think it had an effect?
Look, almost 14 months if you do the math, because the last fight was June of last year, early June of last year. Perhaps I think mostly that affects you in the start, but on some level, you have to let your hands go. So I don't think his performance was enough to show that. Like, he didn't build up enough excuses for me, I guess is the point. Because it's not like the fight was close, right? It's not like he just gave up the first 3 rounds, started rallying a little bit, and then was put down. I don't know if he won a round.
I gave him the 7th round. I gave him the 7th round, but you could have given that round as well to Inoue.
I don't know if he won a round. Like, I was watching the fight, and I think it was maybe round 5 or 6 where I was like, that was Stephen Fulton's best round, and I'm not sure he won it because Inoue is just active the entire time. And granted, I thought that there was some, because this happens when you fight in somebody's hometown. There were some, and I know this as a Felix Trinidad guy. There's some times where now Inoue doesn't really land something, it gets blocked, and the crowd is oohing and eyeing because of how it looks or whatever is partially blocked. But he was landing a lot of those shots, a lot of times. Anyway.
You know what? The first 3 rounds, though, I thought Fulton blocked a lot of his shots. They weren't clean shots that were landed on him, but he was getting the oohs and ahs. But, you know, in Japan, it's a little bit different. It's not like in the States, right?
Yeah.
That's that's actually a great comment right now by IMPK13, who, by the way, is one of our regulars that hops on these lives. So we do appreciate you. Anyway, going for undisputed, because we know what happened to Stephen Fulton's nemesis.
Yeah.
Marlon Tapales came in and took those belts away from Akhmadaliev.
I'm not gonna lie though, like if I'm looking at the list of this is the logical fight next. Like let's have Inoue try to go undisputed in another weight class, which, I mean, come on, like that, you want to talk about history and future Hall of Fame resume. Like, we're seeing a future Hall of Famer in real time right now. I firmly believe that. This fight doesn't excite me as much as the Stephen Fulton one did. And there are no fights as super. This is the thing about him beating Stephen Fulton in the first fight, right? It's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. I'm not as excited. I'm not going to be as excited about any of the fights as super bantamweight going forward. I'll be excited and I'm going to watch and we're going to cover it because it's Naoya Inoue. But in terms of the competition here, Luis Neri, you know what I mean? Like Marlon Tapales, who obviously has both titles. And if you look on down the line, like, you just don't have a lot there to work with. And if you go to, I think potentially what I'm getting at is this will be a short time at super bantamweight, and then eventually we'll see at featherweight Naoya Inoue, where there are some interesting matchups there.
All right, so Tyrone the Great, I'm feeling the exact same way you are right now with those crying emojis. Also, Tyrone the Great, one of our regulars, a friend of the show, might I say, he said, I want to see him go to featherweight and take Davis Drain down to 30 and fight them.
Nah, Tank it moving to 130 at this point. I would imagine that someone else I saw tweeted that, like, I get like Naoya Inoue versus Tank Davis. I'm like, that's realistically is not going to happen, but that would be a lot of fun if it did. But I don't think you could come to a reasonable, like, even catch weight for that fight. At featherweight, though, there are some interesting matchups there for Inoue if he's going to move up. But I still think that's maybe a year or so away. But the fact that we're talking about that now is crazy because he took out what I thought and what you thought was the undisputed king of this division, Stephen Fulton. I think even now, like, this is similar to how I felt after Inoue got rid of Manny Rodriguez got rid of Jason Maloney, where like those are top 2 guys in the weight classes. I still think Stephen Fulton's the second best guy in this weight class
He
right
is.
now, regardless of how he looked. Like I think he'll beat pretty much everyone else in this weight class, assuming that his chin holds up going forward. Because once it goes once, we have to be careful with that now. But Naoya Inoue was dominant tonight. Like one of the things that really impressed me, to talk about the actual fight for a second, one of the things that really impressed me was he had the 3-inch reach disadvantage and just destroyed him in the jab battle. Jabs to the body, jabs to the head, was able to get in and out, perfect timing a lot of the times, was moving his head constantly. I was impressed by his defense, and I was impressed by how much he was able to use his jab. Round 1, it was just establishing the jab. Jab, 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 upstairs, downstairs, up jab, etc. And then round 2 is when he started throwing right hands behind it. And then you just saw him mix it up going forward, head, body, and he's just all around maybe the best fighter pound for pound in the world right now.
Yeah, I don't think there's a doubt about it. Going back to the fight, when we talked about the first 3 rounds, the first 4 rounds, when it went 4-0 in a way, right away, I was like, I didn't expect him to be winning 4 rounds to nothing against a guy like Stephen Fulton, who is so skilled, right? And you thought right away, we were talking about how he was the bigger guy, right? How he was going to establish the jab, how he was the slicker boxer, how Inoue was going to look in this weight class. Like there were so many questions coming into this fight. And, Tim Bradley said it perfectly on that broadcast. When you're that great, you make it look that easy. I don't think there's anyone else in this weight class, in the super bantamweight weight class, that can make Stephen Fulton look the way that Inoue did tonight or this morning.
Or featherweight or bantamweight or like in these lighter weight classes. I think if you're still ranking everyone from like featherweight down, Stephen Fulton's going to be top 5 on that list of boxers.
You know what my issue was with this fight? It's like when he was in range and he was able to get in range, he just didn't let his hands go. And it's like, you have to let your hands go in a fight like this. You didn't expect the boxer to get outboxed by a guy like Inoue, but Inoue has skill as well.
You know why,
Van Dam, I was very impressed with Inoue's jabs. Fulton was more stationary than I thought he would be. I agree with you. I thought he was tentative. I thought he was you have to give a guy like Inoue respect. But when you're in range, you got to let your hands go. And he was giving him way too much respect. Like you have to take advantage of those opportunities.
But I think that's what it was. It was basically like Stephen Fulton immediately, because I told you, jabs to the stomach, like right away, was letting the right hand go, Naoya Inoue. And I think, he didn't want to let his hands go because he knew it was coming back at him. And he was trying to figure out ways where he could sort of get in and out of range without taking a lot of damage and, swim in water without getting wet. But Inoue made his presence felt from the opening bell. I think that really, like, again, those first 10 seconds were a lot for me because he came out, was aggressive right away, and was like, look, I'm not going to let you win this jab battle. I'm not going to let you win this range battle, even though I'm shorter, 3 inches with a smaller reach. Yeah, I'm just going to take control of this fight. And he did, and Stephen Fulton kind of let it happen, but didn't quite come up with the answers to negate that. Robin B31 comments, respect to Palas for showing up with his belts and taking on the challenge right away. Have a look and learn Fury. Oh, Tyson Fury is gonna fight Francis Ngannou. God damn it. But look, Marlon Tapales also knows that financially this would be huge for him. I hope that fight is in Japan. I know I said that I want Inoue to come to the States, but this
fight should definitely be in Japan. If it's Tapales and Inoue, yeah.
This would be a bigger fight in Japan than it would be in the States. It just would be. And if you're going to do it again on a Tuesday morning, I kind of like this, by the way. Like
I love boxing in the morning. Like, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm on the West Coast, so it's 4 a.m. I was supposed to wake up at like 3, and I told Brian I'm going to sleep for 3 hours and wake up at 3. I slept in, woke up at 4, and I was like, Brian, I thought the fight was on.
I woke up and Ramirez was winning by knockout.
You woke up 10 minutes later. I was like, I don't know. I thought I missed the fight at one point, but I love boxing in the morning. We talked about Marlon Tapales and we talked about Inoue. I want to talk to you a little bit about what's next for Stephen Fulton, actually, because I think this is a conversation that needs to be had when you are essentially the king of the division at the moment, right? Like, I thought he would have beat Akhmadaliev. Tapales ended up beating him.
Yeah.
But this was a fight where this was his division. Inoue comes in and listen, you could argue that Inoue won every round up until he knocked him out. I gave 1 round to Fulton. Maybe I was being generous because I really wanted to give him a round.
It ultimately doesn't matter either, but yeah.
Yeah. But the way that he made him look, what's next for a guy like Stephen Fulton in that weight class?
I mean, he could still fight Akhmadaliev now, and I'd watch the hell out of that fight,
would,
right?
yeah.
Like, if they put that on Showtime or something, I assume he goes back. I saw that PBC put up a graphic wishing Stephen Fulton luck, and yeah, I was like, whew, boy, the graphic should have looked better anyway, but that's another story for another day. Yeah, I think there are still fights at super bantamweight, but obviously Undisputed is going to go to either Marlon Tapales or, somebody, Naoya Inoue, and then somebody else comments here, IMPK Fulton versus Robesi Ramirez, IMPK 13. I don't know if Fulton is going to move up to featherweight, but that is an interesting discussion here. Does Fulton actually pivot? Because he unified as super bantamweight. Terrence Crawford once did this against Victor Postol. He unified and then he moved up. He didn't, you don't need to become undisputed to move up. And I don't know, what the weight cut is for Stephen Fulton. That's something that he could sort of attest to. But I do feel like short of beating Naoya Inoue, which no one has done yet, he's done everything in this division that he probably needs to. And for the foreseeable future, that Inoue is going to fight Marlon Tapales. Maybe it's later this year, maybe it's early next year, but it's going to be a while from now. And if Fulton were to get a rematch or a shot at super bantamweight, neither of which I think is going to happen because the winner would then be undisputed. And it's probably going to be Naoya Inoue, if we're being honest. And he already lost him by a blowout, which is to say Stephen Fulton's probably not going to fight for a title anytime soon anyway in this weight class. So I do think you entertain moving him up to featherweight. Not sure if it's going to be against Robesi Ramirez. Maybe he has a non-title fight first.
Maybe a Brandon Figueroa rematch. Right? Because
that would be interesting.
That's a possibility. But listen, you took off one of these comments that had a joke that I want to give props to because I thought it was kind of funny. It was from Nerd. Let me just show this right now. It was from Nerd. Fulton left his slickness and skills in the hotel he was staying in, possibly.
That's gonna be a long flight back to Philadelphia.
So here's the thing that I do want to say, and taking an L, right, as a boxer, like everyone wants that Money Mayweather, we know how it is, right? However, it's like when you actually take a look at what Fulton did, right, being the unified champ in this division, waiting for this fight against Akhmadaliev. Akhmadaliev didn't hold up his end of the bargain. Tapales ends up winning the belts. And then that's not like the fight that everyone kind of wants to see. No one really cares to see Fulton and Tapales at that point. Inoue decides to move up. And this is a fight where it's like the best are fighting the best in their prime. And to do that and get the loss, like one of these guys were going to lose.
Yeah.
Regardless. One of these guys were, unless it was a draw, but nonetheless, one of them was going to lose.
Right.
And it's like, I don't think this one loss makes him not great, but it's just the way that he lost. Where I think there's going to be a little bit of a stain on his name now for a little while until he proves himself again. So that's the thing. I think people are going to go back to this fight and say, cool boy Steph, like people, listen, we had a comment, Nerd, again, I'm going to put this one up on the screen. He said that Fulton got exposed. And I think people are going to continue to say this because now we're going to be talking about whether the fact that there was too much hype on a guy like Stephen Fulton. Boxing Maniac, who, by the way, appreciate you leaving comments on our videos. If you haven't already subscribed to The Mandatory, make sure you do. Also like the video, helps the channel grow. Inoue is the best fighter in the world. No debating. Argue with your mama.
Argue with moms, yo.
Yeah,
I think to go to the Stephen Fulton point in terms of what's next, and please do continue to leave questions, comments, because before we get out of here in about 10 minutes, we are going to end the show with your questions, comments, and just more talk about what's next going forward. And obviously, we're going to have another live on Saturday night after Errol Spence fights Terrence Crawford for undisputed at welterweight. But for now, we have this, and in terms of putting a bow on what's next for Stephen Fulton before we get to questions, comments, and things of that nature. We're going to get to, hold on. We'll get to more comments in a second. I saw what you just saw. We're going to get to that in a second. Stephen Fulton, I think the move is probably going up to featherweight at this point because I feel like what else are you going to do at super bantamweight now? The champions at featherweight, you have Ray Vargas, WBC champion. That's interesting. I'd watch that. I don't think he should be Fulton shouldn't fight for a title next. Fight somebody else
No, he
first.
needs
Fight a
after
yeah.
getting knocked out like that, you're gonna need a tune-up, especially if you're moving up a weight class. You need
Do
a
it in
tune-up.
Philly. Do it in
Yeah.
Philly. You know what I mean? Have a hometown fight. Build back up your confidence. Do it late this year. Win by maybe even by knockout, but at least a wide decision. Lee Wood is WBA champion. That's interesting. Luis Lopez, who has title defense coming up in September, has been announced. He's the IBF champion, at least for now. And the WBO champion, Robeisy Ramirez, successfully defended his title on the undercard in Japan. So I would like to see Stephen Fulton against anyone there. I think that Robeisy Ramirez will probably be the favorite in that fight, but I think Fulton could potentially win that. I think he could take Luis Lopez, though that won't be easy at all, but I think he could take that. Lee Wood, I like him.
I like him against Lee Wood.
I like him against Lee. Yeah.
If
That's the one. Like, if you had to pick one of the champions,
I'm like, yo, pick Lee Wood.
No disrespect to Lee Wood, but like, I don't want to fight Ray Vargas after this, you know. But if he fought Ray Vargas, I think there are some things he could figure out in that fight. It's just, you know, Ray Vargas is pretty explosive, and yeah, we'll get to maybe some comments now. But I think move to featherweight, Stephen Fulton. That's what I would do.
Yeah, we gotta get to this one because Shantelle, I said you're Inoue's wife now. So this was a comment that was left after the betting video that we made, where I had Stephen Fulton winning by a decision, and you know, how many wives does Inoue have? I don't know.
Is there a thing that he has? Let's not even go down that road.
I don't know, but before the comment was, you're going to be one of his wives. Listen, my husband's knocking out people like that. I don't really care because he's knocking out a dude that was arguably the king of the 122-pound division. Listen, I was wrong. You know, I went with Fulton. I'm not afraid to admit it. And I said on that video, if Inoue ends up knocking him out or winning, I wouldn't be surprised. And that's exactly what happened.
And I said if he'll win by knockout, it'll be between 7 and 12. So
did I expect it to be a blowout? I think there was some people that were saying it was going to be the other way. That they
he was going to take him to school.
That's what I heard from a lot of people. So coming into this fight, it's really interesting to see what happens. Inoue, though, at this point, is the face of boxing. Like, he could arguably be the face of boxing after this performance.
Inoue?
I think he could be.
I mean, they won't allow that to happen here.
No, but here's the thing. After this
that's
fight,
that's just ignorance, and this is ignorance, right? Like, I think. Well, also Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence. I think the winner of that fight will be. But
I mean, like, internationally
was what I was thinking. Yeah, I mean,
face of boxing, like not here in North America,
definitely in Asia. Absolutely
sure.
In Asia.
I mean, worldwide, right? Like, if you think about an international superstar.
Nah, they won't allow that. They won't allow that shit in the UK. They will not allow that shit in the UK. In the UK, it's, you know,
Lee Wood,
Sonny Edwards. You know what I mean? Like, they don't want it to be Tyson Fury over there. I can tell you that. I've had enough people from the UK, and shout out to our UK listeners, watchers. They're like, nah, fuck Tyson Fury. They're done with him, and well, he's fighting Francis Ngannou next. So yeah. Any other comments, questions? Outdoor Tyrone the Great chimes in one more time. I am sick on my bet slip. They robbed Maxie Hughes, and Fulton got a knockout. See, here's the thing you have to factor in with boxing betting. If I can just get into this for a quick second, but like, going into that fight, I was actually a little nervous that Maxie Hughes would beat George Kambosos, but I was like, the judges aren't going to give it to Maxie Hughes unless he destroys him. And they didn't. You got to factor that in too, which is why, like, betting on this fight, if you thought Stephen Fulton was going to win, it's like you have to think he's just going to outclass Naoya Inoue, because in Japan, knowing that Stephen Fulton's probably not going to win by knockout because he's just not that type of fighter, which is fine. Like, I don't need everyone to be just knocking dudes out, right? But I think with Stephen Fulton, he would have had to have an epic performance, like on some Floyd Mayweather, Arturo Gatti shit, in order to get the decision here. And obviously that didn't end up happening. So we have right now, Hustle Man commenting, I said 8 to 10 to get the knockout. There you go.
That's a good bet. That was probably some good value, Hustle Man.
Yeah. This fight also went under in terms of rounds. The over-under was about 10.5. I saw it, and I was like, I thought that Fulton could bring this to the cards. But actually, as soon as round 2 ended, I was looking to live bet, which I got to bet Inoue by knockout between round 7 and 12, because I saw some things in round 2 where I was like, oh no, he's gonna stop him late. I
also like this comment.
It's
because you've been talking for a minute, Bryan. So let's get to these.
No, you're right.
Hustle man, keep your head up high, cool boy. Respect for daring to be great, unlike these other fighters. That's what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Like, he dared to be great. He went over to Japan. He put his titles on the line. In his prime, was undefeated. He put his record on the line. Not a lot of dudes are doing that. So I don't think he should get knocked for that. It just came out to the fact that he got outclassed and Inoue was the better fighter.
All the way across the world too.
And listen, it's one of those career defining moments where what is next for him? Because we know what's next for Inoue. Right? Yeah. Like, he's arguably pound for pound, because Bud and Spence hasn't happened right now. No, he's number 1 right now for a couple of days at least. Okay, for a couple of days at least, he's number 1. And if that Bud and Spence fight is controversial, say there's no clear-cut winner like Haney Loma, as a lot of people thought,
might even be a draw. As one
then I think Inoue stays number 1, pound for pound, number 1 boxer in the world. If that fight isn't a clear-cut win for either Bud or Spence.
That's fair. So
now we're talking about the pound for pound list, and like, the monster is the monster. He's the truth. I will never doubt this guy again. I don't care how many weight classes he goes up, because like what he did today.
He ain't fighting at welterweight.
Listen, what he did today has to be argued as probably one of the best performances of the year, hands down. This has to be the best boxing performance of the year for what he did to Stephen Fulton.
Ooh, well, remember, this is more impressive than that, but Gervonta Davis, Ryan Garcia, I feel like you felt similarly after the fight in terms of the impressive performance that Gervonta Davis had.
Tank to me is the best lightweight in the world. Like, I saw the rankings that ESPN had put out. This is a conversation for another time, but to me, he is the best. I have him over Haney. I don't care if Haney has the belts.
Did you see that they're talking about Gervonta Davis defending his title against Chris Colbert next?
I did see that.
That rumor that started? Yeah.
Let's go to Robin B31. Circling back to the bandage controversy, do you think that was just a way to try and get some attention for the fight, or some mind games, or a legit concern?
I like the conspiracy theory. I wouldn't say that it was to get attention to the fight. I do think maybe there's a mind games factor, and also maybe legitimate question about the hand wraps. But for people who don't know, the hand wrap controversy, quote unquote, as Robin posted with air quotes, it's just the way Inoue sort of stacks his hands when he wraps it. People were saying like, oh, he shouldn't be allowed to do that. But hand wrapping, there's different rules in different states. Famously, before Felix Trinidad fought Bernard Hopkins, they wanted Felix Trinidad to rewrap his hands because in New York State you had to do it a certain way, whatever. And he's been fighting in New York, and it was that kind of thing. There wasn't a controversy there. There wasn't a controversy here. The controversy would be like Antonio Margarito before Shane Mosley and after Miguel Cotto and during Miguel Cotto fight, where he straight up had like plaster in his gloves, which is a totally different thing.
Oh, the jokes are coming. The jokes are coming.
I tell you, you be funny. We're putting you on screen when we do live. I hope y'all all come out Saturday and tell your friends to subscribe to the channel. IMPK 13 says, I think that Fulton's team wanted to preserve some bandages for Fulton's head.
Listen,
I think we could wrap on that note.
I think so, but I think when I saw the blood, I think when it was like the third round, after the third round, he had a little bit of blood or whatever. Yeah, that's when I was like, I don't know. Like, that's when I really started. It wasn't even when it went 4-0. That's when I was like, I don't know. Like, that's when I started to get worried, and I was like, God damn, my bet. Yeah, I'm not mad at taking Fulton though, because I don't think we've never seen that ever happen to him. He's never been dropped before. He's never been knocked out before. And it just shows you how great Inoue is. And I think that's the discussion that we need to have is this arguably the best performance of the year? I think it might be. What Fulton. He did, what he did to the guy at 122 pounds, who's been the guy, this has to be the best performance of the year. And unless like Spence or Bud knock each other out, I don't think that's gonna happen. Like, this is the best performance of the year, and I don't see anyone topping it.
Fulton also looked bigger which is the thing that I noticed right away.
He didn't fight like the bigger guy though.
No, not at all.
Right.
Hustle Man, let's see, take us home here, maybe, perhaps, unless somebody got a better comment than this to end the show. Spence Crawford will decide who is pound for pound number one. Don't forget, Inoue versus Tapalas will happen end of the year, and there's no denying Inoue pound for pound best fighter in the world, undisputed 2 times. He will be undisputed 2 times if, and I would say when, he beats Marlon Tapalas, hopefully later this year. Hopefully that does get made later this year. Japan does have fights in December. Like, they've had fights like around New Year's. I remember Gennady Golovkin was supposed to fight Ryota Murata like New Year's Day or New Year's Eve or something like that one year. I think it ended up getting pushed back. I don't remember what happened there.
It got pushed back. Yeah, it got pushed back. That was a good fight.
That was supposed to be on a Wednesday too, you know?
Yeah, Triple G looked good in that fight. And I'm just saying that because I'm a big Triple G fan.
And Murata retired, so salute to Murata.
Yeah. All right, so final comments.
Yes.
We'll get to Hustle Man one more time. He made Fulton look ordinary, which was crazy. I thought it'll be competitive in the first half. I thought the same, Hustle Man. Like, I was legit like, what is going on here? I was proven wrong, but now I'm just gonna take it away by knockout every time.
Yeah, honestly.
I don't care anymore. Like, this is
unless
one of
he
those
fights Tank or some shit. Like,
yeah, then that's something different. But
that ain't happening.
I don't see that fight happening. I do see Inoue moving up to featherweight at one point though.
Me too. I think it happens next year or the year after. Who is the best? Like, okay, Stephen Fulton. Who is the next Stephen Fulton level challenger, I guess, to NAOYA Inoue at this point? Like, who that good will be able to fight him anytime soon?
If he moves up to featherweight, then Brandon Figueroa, because there's some hype on Brandon Figueroa.
I think he's gonna kick Brandon Figueroa's ass if they fought
under 6. Like, I don't know.
I don't know if it'll be that soon, but
Brandon Figueroa's got power too. And remember, there was a comment actually here I actually want to get to. Nerd, who by the way has been dropping some heat on this live, he said Brandon beat Fulton in his opinion. A lot of people felt like that.
Yeah,
a lot of people felt like that.
I did not.
I had it 8-4.
I had it 7-5, 115, 113. It was close though. It was close. And Fulton aced some shots in that fight for sure. We'll see. But I think that to put a bow on this, Inoue pound for pound is number one for now. We'll see what happens on Saturday. He may remain number one after to some people, and that's perfectly fine. But he asserted his dominance. He's as good as anybody right now. He looks unbeatable. Like, I find myself every time I watch him after the first round, I'm like, who the hell is going to beat this dude? And I don't have the answer to that yet. So
me and Tyrone like the same boxers. Oshaki Foster is a solid boxer. Yeah,
featherweight though.
Yeah, and by who knows, Inoue's going to move up at one point.
Oshaki, you want a good payday? You come down to 126 when Inoue moves the featherweight for that fight.
I mean, here's the thing though. Cool Boy did make a lot of bread off of this fight, so good for him. Yes. These fighters should be making bread. Final thoughts before we get up and out of here, Bryan.
Final thoughts for the 5th time. But yes, one, thank you to everybody for watching, rocking with us. We will be back on Saturday night. Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford live here on YouTube, on Twitter, wherever you're watching this. And the channel is growing, so thank you for your support. Please continue to do so. Tell your friends and tell your homies, tell your mom, tell everybody. And as far as this fight, again, Inoue,
I didn't know friends and homies were 2 different things, but go ahead.
They could be, but that's another story for another day. I think that NAOYA Inoue is looking unbeatable every time I watch him. And Marlon Tapalas, I don't think is as good as Stephen Fulton, and he's going to win and become undisputed as super bantamweight. And I want to see Inoue at featherweight, and I want to see Stephen Fulton at featherweight, not against each other, but I want to see Stephen Fulton at featherweight because I think there are some beatable champions in that weight class, which is normally a stacked weight class that I don't think is its strongest right now. And Fulton could sort of quickly rebound, have a come home fight in Philadelphia, maybe later this year, and then next year fight for a featherweight title and potentially win it. I think that'd be the pathway for Stephen Fulton. And, NAOYA Inoue could just rule the world otherwise.
My final thoughts are Inoue's pound for pound number 1 boxer in the world. Button Spence will have a say in that this weekend. But this is arguably the best performance I've seen all year from a boxer. Could be argued as the performance of the year. And I think just in sports in general, this might be the best performance we've seen all year in sports, in my opinion. And as for Stephen Fulton, let's give him props. Was out of the ring for more than a year, went all the way to Japan, put his titles on the line, fought in his prime, put his undefeated record on the line. Like, he is, listen, you gotta be cut from a different type of cloth to do something like that, because there's a lot of guys in boxing that aren't doing that. So before you go ahead and say that he got exposed, let's just give props to Inoue, but let's also give props to Stephen Fulton, because not a lot of people in his position would have done what he did, and I think he deserves some props for that too. You got to be a G to do something like that. Put your unified titles on the line, go to Japan to fight a guy that is known as the monster. You're fighting the best of the best, and I think he deserves some credit there. So before we get up and out of here, I want to say thank you to everyone who joined the live show today, that left a comment. If you have already subscribed, thank you so much for rocking with us. I know we had a lot of friends of the show leave comments on here. We do appreciate you guys so much. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And yeah, we got some more content coming soon. And we also have a post-fight show coming up for Bud and Spence on Saturday night. So make sure to tune into that. And we'll be with you soon with some more content. Thank you so much. And we hope you enjoyed the fight. If you're watching this later, still drop your comments. Show us your bet slips as well.
Yeah.
Let's see how right you were. And yeah, thank you so much for rocking with us. And we hope you enjoyed the fight.